Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Erin Murphy, at-large City Councilor, and I am the chair of the Boston City Committee on Strong Women, Families, and Communities. Today is February 5th, 2024. This hearing is being recorded, and it is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.swfc@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing, if there is any, and individuals will be called on in the order which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you're interested in testifying in person, which I don't think we have anyone, maybe we do, so let me make sure we read. If you're interested in testifying in person, please sign up at the sheet near the entrance where you came in. If you're looking to testify virtually, you can email Central Staff Liaison Megan Kavanaugh at Megan, MEGHAN .Kavanaugh, KAVANAGH at boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. So, today's hearing is on docket 0138, a message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $146,089.77 in the form of a grant for the FY23 Violence Against Women Act, a stop grant awarded by the United States Department of Justice, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund a civilian domestic violence advocate who provides services for victims in Jamaica Plain, East Boston, and Charlestown, as well as overtime for all civilian domestic violence advocates citywide. This matter was sponsored by the administration and was referred to the committee on January 24th. We are joined today by my colleagues in order of arrival: Councilor Ed Flynn from District 2, Councilor Liz Braden from District 9, Councilor Ben Weber from District 6, and Councilor Fitzgerald from District 3. I have a short opening remarks. I'll give my colleagues a chance if they want for opening remarks. Then we will hear from you, and then we will also have a round of questions. So thank you. And welcome, everyone. We are at the first hearing of the new term, so I'm glad to be here, and as the new chair of Strong Women, Families, and Communities, an important committee to be chairing. Some people know that lots of grants come through our agenda on Wednesdays, and many times we do suspend and pass low-dollar grants. But in this particular grant, I think a lot of them, it's an opportunity for us to learn more about the important work, and in this case, the important work that the Domestic Violence Unit and the Boston Police is doing, knowing that I'm looking forward to our relationship growing and working closer and advocating, and just knowing how important it is that we have the resources to fully fund this department is very important to me. So making sure that we get those questions answered, and then also going into budget season, right? We have 1, maybe 2 days where the Boston Police come in to get their whole budget passed, but we don't get to really talk to individual units that are so important like this one. So thank you for coming and being here. I will go in the order of arrival for opening statements, so that would be Councilor Flynn. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panel, Jenna Savage, for being here, for the professional and dedicated work that you do as a member of the Boston Police Department Research and Development Team. Domestic violence is one of the most important issues impacting the city for so many reasons. It impacts residents throughout public housing. It impacts many immigrant communities that I represent as well. The first meeting I had 6 years ago when I became a city councilor, I met with the director of the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence, and she mentioned to me that one of the biggest challenges she has as it relates to domestic violence is language and communication access. Those are the issues that I want to focus on. I also want to acknowledge the role of my mother when she was the First Lady. She did a lot of work on domestic violence-related issues. So I want to say thank you to my mother for the work she did on domestic violence issues. For my colleagues that are new to the department, the Family Justice Center has an incredible staff there as well, and I do hope to arrange a tour maybe sometime in the spring so we all can visit there. I know how important their work is. I also know, Councilor Murphy, that when this type of grant does come here before the body, it may not seem all that much money, $150,000, but as you pointed out correctly, it's an opportunity for us to learn about what services this team is providing, how they're interacting with neighbors, how they're assisting survivors of domestic violence. So it's incredibly important that when we have grants that come to the City of Boston, really not to suspend and pass. Let's do a favor for our new colleagues and give them an opportunity to learn about these grants, because they're incredibly important, and here's where you learn about them. And my final thing, Madam Chair, is, and I'm glad this is in your committee where it should be, but I also think there should be a standalone domestic violence committee on the Boston City Council, something I have advocated in the past, something I'm going to continue to advocate for, because this is an important issue. Again, it's impacting so many people and so many residents and neighbors in our immigrant community. It's a distinct issue that deserves its own standalone committee, something I'm going to continue to focus on and try to encourage my colleagues to support it, because I think it's desperately needed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. We have been joined by Councilor Mejia and Councilor Louis-Jean. We're doing opening remarks. Councilor Braden, you're next. Thank you.
And Councilor,
Oh, I mentioned him. He was here on time. Yeah, thank you.
didn't hear that. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here this afternoon. I think this is a very, very important work. I've got some questions. I'd love to hear your presentation. I think the issues that come up to my mind are just really, again, thinking about our immigrant groups and how our undocumented population are very fearful of reporting domestic violence. In many cases, that's something that's held over them. Like if you report all sorts of bad things, you're going to get deported or whatever. And also the other question, also Brighton, we have a huge, I spoke with District Attorney Kevin Hayden recently, and I said, you know, we have a lot of petty crime, we have a lot of break-ins, and but he said the one issue in Alston Brighton, District 9, that's above the city average is actually domestic violence. So I'm really interested to hear how this money will be spent and how we can elevate attention and resources to this very important issue. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Councilor Weber?
Thank you. Hi. I represented victims of domestic violence as a law student at the University of Iowa Legal Clinic, and I saw that some of this grant money will go toward helping victims in Jamaica Plain, and I'm just here to learn more about what we're doing and what I can do to support victims of domestic violence. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilor Weber. Councilor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Savage, for coming in front of us today. I'm excited to learn more about, this is my first hearing as well, right? So I'm also interested in just the process going on here, but understanding what this funding will be used for and how it will help. So I'm just here to listen, and then if I have any questions, I'll ask later, but thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilor Mejia?
Yes. Hey, Madam Chair. Your first hearing.
It is the first one of the term, yes.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Here's hoping you get blessed with many more. So I just wanted to thank you for hosting, and thank you for being here. I think one of my previous colleagues had noted how important it is for us to utilize hearings to review and listen and learn how dollars are getting allocated and allotted. And even though this is not lots of millions, it's still a significant amount. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to listen and learn and see so that we can make informed decisions. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to do just that. I'll just say two things as it relates to the work, having worked with women, many of which who are living in shelter. I still do some volunteer work in certain spaces. I'd love to hear what the work looks like within shelters, right? Not just, I know we're talking about domestic violence, but there's still issues of abuse happening, even if you're not living in co-sharing space together. So curious about what that potentially could look like. And we do a lot of work with young people, and I'm curious what, if any, programming or support services for youth dating violence, or if any at all. And I really am grateful to my colleagues for uplifting folks who are undocumented, because I know that is an issue that usually bubbles up to the top in terms of why folks are suffering in silence. Many are afraid of losing or being deported or just being exposed. And so curious about what that work is going to look like in that space. I'm here to listen and learn and, do my due diligence, getting paid to do my job.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilor Louis-Jean.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for being here. Thank you to the chair for hosting. I think that the work done by VAWA is incredibly important to the city, to this country. Councilor Braden uplifted what it has meant for and what it means for immigrant women. I had mostly housing cases as a student attorney, but some domestic violence, and I interpreted for women who were seeking protection under VAWA, which was really important work. And so I am absolutely supportive of this. Chair, I want to thank you. I moved domestic violence to this committee, to strong women, communities, and families, which was the vision. It was previously in public health, moved it to this committee because I know how much you champion it, and also because that was the vision of Councilor Presley in creating this committee, and now Congresswoman Presley. The violence that is done towards women, towards intimate partner violence. When we talk about ending all forms of violence, intimate partner violence has to be one of them. It is at the root of gun violence. It is at the root of a lot of the violence that we see in this country. And so I think it is incredibly important that we get this right. And I'm glad to know that we are doing this work. Our domestic violence advocates here in the city are really committed to this work, and I think it's really important. So I just want to thank you and want to thank my colleagues for your dedication to this issue, because it's one that's really important, and it's one that's really hard to talk about often. And talking about it and supporting those who are victims of intimate partner violence and domestic violence is critically important. So thank you for being here, and happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're up. So thank you, Jenna Savage. You're the Deputy Director, Office of Research and Development for the Boston Police Department. For those at home who may not know the amazing work you do, but thank you. You have the floor.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Nice to meet all the new faces. This is exciting. I didn't realize I was the guinea pig for the new, new year.
You're it.
If this were my first one, I'd be extremely nervous. Instead, I'm only like a little nervous. So I guess I'll give some background. I am the Deputy Director of the Boston Police Department's Office of Research and Development. So for anyone who doesn't know, I guess I'll just kind of at least provide that background information too. So we have, it's a civilian-only office within the police department that one of the many things that we do is we apply for grants. So things that we don't have enough operating budget funds to support, we're able to supplement those funds to be innovative, to do evidence-based practices, things kind of above and beyond that we might not be able to do with our operating budget. So we get to do some of the greatest work that I think our department does, some of our mental health work, our youth violence prevention. Just so much has come and started from grants and sometimes goes to the operating budget from there, often with support from this body. And so this is one of those things where, and just to explain, so our office applies for the grants. So I'm here because I applied for this grant and I know it inside and out. If I had realized that this was really so informative, I would have brought someone from the domestic violence unit with me. So any questions I can't answer, I apologize and I'll get back to you on. So just, my specialty area, while I've written this grant, many, many, many times. I do not work in the domestic violence unit, but I get to work with them and to help do this project. And so we get these grant funds every year. They're passed through EOPS from the Office of Violence Against Women, and they've always funded one of our civilian domestic violence advocates. So as you know, police encounter victims of domestic violence. Working with sworn officers might not be the most comfortable for victims. And so we have these incredibly important staff who are Boston Police Department employees, but they are civilians and they are housed out in the districts, and they work with our victims. And they help them to do, safety planning. They can provide culturally and linguistically sensitive services. They can help walk them through what they're going to be going through in the criminal justice process. So they kind of can give a much more, it must feel like a much safer support than when you're just working directly with law enforcement. So they lend so much to this entire process for people who are going through perhaps the worst time of their lives. And so again, we have never had enough operating budget funds to really cover a full cadre of civilian domestic advocates. We still, if you ask me, don't have enough, but we've always used the VAWA grant to supplement that. And so every year we get these funds. They fund one full-time civilian domestic violence advocate who is housed in E13. She does speak Spanish. And actually, Councilor Braden, as you mentioned, this actually does interest you, I think, because up until now, she's been housed in E13, which is Jamaica Plain, and also covered A7, and what was it, A7 and?
Charleston.
Yeah, Charlestown, thank you. But we actually just hired a few new ones through another grant that we got, and so Area A is going to be covered by one of the newly hired domestic violence advocates, and so I think D14, there's talk about D14 possibly, which is Alston, Brighton, and BPD district talk. D14 might be assigned to her as well, just to kind of share the load. Every domestic violence advocate has to cover more than one district. There's still just such a caseload. In an ideal world, we'd have at least one per district, which would be 11. Currently, we have 7. And then there's also overtime through the grant that will enable the VAWA-funded civilian domestic violence advocate and all the other advocates to provide overtime when they're not working their regular shifts. And because this advocate in particular speaks Spanish, she will be available citywide to assist with those services. And happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, no, thank you. And thank you for sharing that you don't work directly, right? So,
Yep.
And if there are any questions, we'll make sure through.
Sure thing.
Yeah,
like
that
I'll
we'll
find
get
out
those
anything.
questions back, but I
Yep.
appreciate you saying that. So I have a couple questions, and I'll go in order of arrival. You kind of touched on, we only have 7, we would love to have 11, but how did we choose JP, East Boston, and Charlestown in this particular round of grant funding?
Well, we've had her there for a while. The E13 is definitely because of the Spanish speaking. I think that was the main thought. And I think there's also a lot of Spanish speaking in A7 as well. So I think that was the main thinking there, was just kind of having her geographically kind of cover places that were in the most need.
Kind of in the need.
Yeah.
You touched on it, but is there specific roles? Because I'm thinking too, when it comes to budget season, if we're advocating, for something specific, which is important to do to uplift specific needs we have in the department, but the role other than supporting, the victim, like, do they have a lot of clerical work? Like, what does their day look like? How much other responsibilities does a civilian have?
I couldn't really tell you what their day-to-day is. I know they're housed in stations. I think they might go to the FJC at least once a week. I think they meet with victims a lot. I think they take a lot of walk-ins. I think they make a lot of phone calls. I'm not sure how much administrative work there is outside of that, but I think they all have pretty full caseloads.
And you may not know this, but
Yep.
we will, I'll just put this question on the record too. Like, I just met with a team with the Kevin Hayden's office, but wondering what other partners they collaborate with.
Oh, I
and
could
share the
definitely name a few.
Okay.
Because we used to have a previous grant called BMAS, but that was also a great project. But we, AFAB, which is the Association of Haitian Women, ATASK, Asian Task Force, Casa Esperanza, Casa Berna Vasquez, Elizabeth Stonehouse, or I think it's just Stonehouse now, just to name a few, but I think we have a lot. But that is a lot of what they do, is they partner with some really great organizations in the
that are
community.
already doing good
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Jenna, and the information you're providing is very helpful. Jenna, can you talk about the outreach we're doing to survivors of domestic violence in the immigrant community, but also specifically with Cantonese-speaking women across the city?
I don't think that I can directly, but I can definitely get back to you on that. I know we do work closely with ATASC, which I believe includes that population. That's a very close partner of ours. But as far as specific outreach to that population, I'd have to get back to you. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, that would be some information I would like to learn more about. Madam Chair, are we able to try to get some information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Keeping track of the questions, we'll make sure.
And I will also mention, because it's related, even though it's not directly related, but the thing that you most often see me here for is mental health, which mental health I feel like covers so much anyway. So I will mention that through a separate grant-funded project, we're about to be doing an educational campaign about all the various things that the Boston Police Department does with respect to mental health, and we're making sure that that's going to be made. There's going to be a big social media push, and I think we're going to make sure there's a lot of languages available and a digital toolkit. So as much as that's not directly domestic violence related, it will at least be some outreach in various languages to let people know the resources that are available for mental health.
Excellent. And the other question, maybe Madam Chair, is I'd like to know what we're doing in public housing developments throughout the city in assisting residents, survivors of domestic violence as well. Again, if we were to suspend and pass this docket, we wouldn't be getting any information. So I'm glad we're having this hearing, and I do want to say thank you to you, Jennifer, for your engagement and for your professionalism. I do want to again highlight once again that Council Murphy, and I know this is our first hearing of the year, I want to say thank you to you for bringing this forward. And I know this is an incredibly important issue for you and for all of our colleagues. I do think that as we go forward, I really would like for this body to support a standalone committee on domestic violence. It is critically important. It's impacting every neighborhood, and maybe we can have a conversation as a body about that, how important this issue is to all of us. And if we agree that it is an important position, let's try to come together and create a standalone domestic violence committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. We have been joined by Councilor Durkin. Thank you. Councilor Braden, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the issues we have, and I think Alston Brighton, like we wonder why have we a higher than average domestic incidence of domestic or intimate partner violence. I wonder, like, is it because we have quite a transient population, that people that move all the time? You know, they're not an established. They don't know their neighbours. You know, see something, say something. It's hard to keep track of. We have a big student population, young professional population that come and go all the time. So is that, I'm just wondering, and as I appreciate completely that you're maybe not able to answer this question, but is that part of the equation when you think about a neighbourhood like Alston Brighton?
I mean, anything I'm saying is completely just off the cuff, and I would not say it's official in any way, shape, or form. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone who would know better or know it all. But just from my studies, I mean, collective efficacy is a real thing when you have people who know each other, when you have people who live in the same place for a long time and tend to look out for each other. You certainly get less crime in general. And I do think, you know, obviously just keeping in mind too that domestic violence includes both intimate and non-intimate partners. So it could certainly be because of, you know, I don't know if maybe there are a lot of roommate situations. I mean, it could be a lot of different things going on in Alston Brighton that maybe result in people who are maybe cohabitating.
Yeah. Something we get to the bottom of. And the other question I had was really, you know, it says this is a pass-through grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, and it's from the Department of Justice. And just in terms of reporting requirements, like what sort of data do you have to report back? We get this from the federal government. Like what do you have to send back, and what's...
Absolutely, yeah, every grant comes with its reporting. So because this is a federal grant that's passed through EOPS, essentially EOPS has to provide a report to the DOJ, and they then request information for us that they collect. We have a domestic violence analyst named Lisa McEachern who works out in the FJC. Her whole job is basically kind of like coordinating the different advocates and collecting the data. And so the data is very heavy on number of victims served, how many were domestic violence versus sexual assault versus stalking. We're almost pretty much, for this grant, we're domestic violence. But a lot of questions about the number of community meetings attended, community partnerships, but a lot about how many victims spoke different languages, were not English, primarily English speakers, how many were below the poverty level. I think there's a lot about kind of like demographics served, but a lot of those kind of statistics.
Yeah, and just in terms of getting a measure of like where we're at, like. Is the incidence of these sort of domestic violence incidents increasing? Is it stable or is it going down? Like I know COVID, we had a hearing about
I was about to say, COVID,
this.
it was definitely increasing. I'm not sure how it's done since, and it was because of COVID that we were able to get a grant to get 2 additional domestic violence advocates who we now have. I don't know if anyone's done an analysis to see if the numbers have come back down since the peak of COVID, but that shouldn't actually be too hard to do. So I can definitely get back to you and we can break it down by district so we can kind of see.
That would be really helpful.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank
Okay.
you.
No, sorry.
Thank you. And I do just want to thank that my colleagues attended, but also came with such great questions, because there was pushback from intergovernmental to not hold this hearing, saying like we could just get a one-pager with information because we do pass this, but as you can see, this is very important. So sorry that you're getting all the questions. I thought someone else who works directly in this department would be answering, but thank you for everything you're doing. Councilor Weber?
Sure, thank you. Just, as having worked briefly in this space as a law student a million years ago, what I recall from that is, the VAWA, the federal law, in part is designed to help immigrants who are victims of domestic violence to come forward and report these incidents, these incidents, and feel like they would be free from being deported or retaliation. And so in my work in the clinic, we were helping people file for, I think, U visas,
Yes.
maybe they were called, or T visas. We have to talk about human trafficking. So my question, just, and this may not be you're able to answer, but is what protocols the police department has to ensure that people with who may be undocumented feel like they can come forward with these kinds of issues?
It's a great question, and there is a component of the application that asks about our policy regarding new visas. And so off the top of my head, I cannot recite it, but I know that that is a part of our requirement and that we do fulfill it. And so I can get back to you with the exact language, but I know that that is a part of what we do, is we assist with the U visa process.
Okay, thank you. I just, I'm learning, and that was something that occurred to me. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen, again, thank you very much for being here. So it's my understanding this funds one position, correct?
One position and overtime for all the positions.
And overtime for the rest. So I know you've said that you've done this grant year over year, know it inside and out. And I think I heard somebody say we want 11, but we're at 6 or 7 right now. What other areas are covered? If this one's covering Jamaica Plain, East Boston, Charlestown, where else is covered, just for my knowledge?
You got it. So currently we have the VAWA-funded advocate who's covering E13 and may soon also be covering D14. We're not sure. We've got another advocate that covers, sorry, I'll stop using the codes.
Jamaica Plain. Yeah, I was going to say, could you translate? I know some of them, but not all. Thank you.
Such a bad habit, sorry. Another advocate covers the Rosendale, West Roxbury, and Hyde Park area, as well as currently Alston, Brighton. All of those. That's one advocate. Yep. Another advocate currently covers South Boston, although I believe she might be out sick, but I don't know how long term that is. Another one covers Mattapan. Another one covers downtown and East Boston, so that's the remainder of Area A that was taken from the VAWA-funded advocate. Another one covers Roxbury, and another one covers Dorchester. So currently, by police district boundaries, the only district that has no coverage is D4, which is the south, which is like downtown, Back Bay. Actually, not downtown, that's A1. South End.
South End.
Yep.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
You all set? Okay, thank you. Councilor Mejia?
Thank you. I know that little shade coming from the intergovernmental. Let me find out. I'm going to have to call you out. No, I'm just joking.
But that was totally partly my
Leave
fault.
them
That was-
alone, Counselor Murphy. Intergovernmental office, then leave them alone. Stop it. Stop being mean to my people. I'm just joking.
Reading an email.
I'm teasing. So it's not a hearing unless I am
Oh, I'm
who I
ready.
am. But, let's just bring it back real quick. I am, I was teasing Counselor Flynn about his persistence in regards to, making sure that we're holding space to talk about this grant, and I'm really happy that you are here. It would have been great to hear from some other folks so that we could do our due diligence. So I think, to Counselor Murphy's point, it would be helpful for us to have the full kit, if you will, so that we can dive a little bit deeper. I guess for me, my questions are, I'm always going to be more concerned about who is at the table and who is not. Unlike my colleague over here, I'm not a lawyer. I am like Erin Brockovich. I don't know the first thing about law, but I do know everything about what it looks like when you are not being treated right. So I'm curious about your relationship or interaction with groups that are not usually traditionally meeting the threshold for collaboration. These are like smaller grassroots organizations that are on the ground doing the work with women, in particular, undocumented women, but aren't part of the elite. So curious, I'm hoping that they are in your radar, and if not, I'd like to know what you're going to do to get them. So it's the Dominican Women's Development Corp in Jamaica Plain. The executive director is Magali Strancoso. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not.
Yeah.
But I also don't work at the FJC, so that's not to say that our advocates have not worked with them. I do not know that.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely be on your radar. A lot of the services that they provide will fit within the scope of what you're hoping to work with and engage. I'm sure you know this one, Centro Presente.
I've heard them, yes.
Yep. So they also have been doing a lot of work in East Boston, specifically around domestic violence issues. And I think that they would be definitely somebody worth you all. If they're not on your radar, they should be, because I didn't hear them in the list of folks that you mentioned.
I have not worked directly with either of those organizations, but I am so appreciative of you telling me about them so I can make sure, and I'm going to guess that when I reach out to the FJC and when I reach out to the advocates, they're going to be like, oh yes, of course. Because the thing is that they need all the help that they can get. And they are trying to reach everyone. There is no word elite in the FJC. The whole point is they're trying to help everyone who needs it, regardless if they live in a public housing, it doesn't matter. They're trying to get to, especially the people who have the hardest time accessing it. And so any organization that you know of that would be willing to work with us, we will work with them.
Yeah.
So please, so you said it was Dominican Women's?
Dominican Women's Corp. Development.
Okay.
I can put you in touch with the executive director.
Please.
The reason, maybe elite is not the right word. English is my second language, and I never, in terms of choosing my words, I have to be more careful because I don't want my words to be misconstrued. I don't mean elite. I guess the word is there are people who have access to information, and there are people who don't, right? And I think what I have seen in government is that people usually go to those who, who are better known or who have more resourced or who have more access. So maybe it's not elite, maybe there's a different word, but whatever word it is, what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of folks who are doing really good work, but they just don't have the status, or they don't have the access, or they don't have the information. So that's what I mean to say. And I don't know what the appropriate word is, but
Sure, no, and what I will say though is I think that a key advantage of this program is that it's initiated by a 911 call. Well, not initiated by a call, but these are people who are coming in encounters with the police. That's everyone and anyone, so it's not like it's like they're having to walk into a place to get services. Like the police are encountering you in the moment when the police were called, and then they're then saying, okay, we're gonna have an advocate contact you. So as far as getting access to those services, we are reaching the people who need it the most because of the timing and how that encounter is happening naturally that way, for better or for worse. But I think that is a really important way that, I think the people who might have the least access might be the most likely to be involved in a 911 call, or not.
Or not. I guess the point that I'm
Yeah.
trying to make is
Yes.
that the folks who would most likely benefit from this information may not know what
Yes.
to do.
Yes.
And there's an opportunity there in terms of the campaign and
Absolutely.
developing awareness, that there's an opportunity to work with other partners to help amplify.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's really about who has access to information, how you get that information out into spaces and places that are not traditionally on your radar.
Yes.
And I think that that's the point that I'm trying to make, right? That there are some folks who are doing really good work who just are not part of the creme or the part of the cool kids club or whatever the case is, right? And they just don't. And I think that those are the folks that I'm here to always uplift. And I just want to uplift that as a standard of what we should be holding ourselves accountable to. So as we're doling out resources and money, that we just need to make sure that we're thinking about how we dismantle and decentralize power.
Absolutely. And I also should add, just for IGR's sake, I'm the one who emailed them and said, hey, are you sure you guys can't just take a one-pager for this? I just want to, so that was, the reason why she asked that was on my behalf, because I was surprised we were doing it for just one. And I'm
Well, I
happy
think,
to
like
be
I
here.
said at the beginning,
Yeah.
we don't want to set a precedence that we're just rubber
Absolutely.
stamping.
But we already
We
did
have a lot of
that.
questions. Yeah.
We already did that on Wednesday. So that's why I'm really surprised that I'm spending my afternoon having a hearing about a grant that's less than, not even close to, and we all approved, well, not me, but I'm saying why we did set the precedents already. We kicked off the year doing so, and so here we are having a hearing on a grant that's less than $200,000, and last week we approved a grant that was $13 million. So I don't know what you're talking about there, Councilor Murphy, because we've already set the precedent in terms of
We can
being
switch
a
the
rubber stamp.
course. We can switch the course. Did you have any more questions? Or?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. President Louis-Jean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank you again, Jenna. I want to thank my colleagues who all had really great comments. I think, Ben, we were at the same clinic in different spaces. Councilor Weber, same clinic in different spaces, although I wasn't doing the legal work. Again, the VAWA petitions are so important for our immigrant women who are facing domestic violence and for everyone. And so I just want to say thank you. I also want to thank the domestic violence advocates. Like I said before, they're second to none. The ones that we have here in the city, I see them at funerals. I see them at constituent homes. I see them literally at community meetings and around the city. And so my hat's off to them for the work that they do. And it's incredibly important that we support this work. So thank you for coming here. I'll still take a one-pager because I think this is good for us to have this information. And really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
And Councilor Durkin, if you'd like to do an opening statement, and if you have any questions or want to get caught up.
Thank you so much. And obviously I've seen you at previous hearings, so thank you so much for the work that you do. So I know Councilor Fitzgerald asked some of the same questions I was going to ask, but I guess one of the questions I had were, how can we ensure that people who may not feel comfortable interacting with the police, especially folks who may be associated with the police operation in general? We have a lot of folks who work in conjunction with the police department, but as we know, domestic violence isn't something that it touches every single person, whether you are connected to power or not, whether you have access to resources or not. So just curious how, because I know you noticed for some of the, you mentioned that a lot of the interactions that folks have are associated with when someone walks into the police station or when a 911 call is made, but obviously domestic violence is so personal and not everyone feels comfortable calling the police or having an interaction with the police, especially depending on where their family works or so how can we ensure that every single person feels comfortable interacting with these advocates? And then I wanted to get a little more into how you apply for these grants, because you had a really eloquent description at one of the hearings that I heard you at last year. And so just to ensure that we all sort of are aware of how these processes work, that especially grants from the United States Department of Justice.
Great questions. I wish there were a way to guarantee that every person who needs services would have access. I can't say that I can think of any way to make that happen, and as it is, we're already short-staffed. I fear that we could not serve every single person who came to us, even if they did come to us. I think having our civilian domestic violence advocates be associated with the police definitely might make it more challenging to trust them, but that is also they're hopefully more trustworthy and more comfortable with them than they would be with the actual police. I think they're contacted separately. It's truly about that person and their needs. And again, we have these partner agencies to also help with that and help with culturally and linguistically sensitive services when they're needed. So I think we just try and make ourselves as available as we can. I know they put pamphlets and flyers in the stations, but I fear that I'm sure more could be done. I wish I had a better answer, but I think it's really difficult. It's a really difficult population to reach. A lot of people, you're right, don't call 911. It's highly underreported, I'm sure. And that's not just a Boston problem, obviously. That's just kind of a universal thing. And so I think we can always do better. And so I can just say that we'll strive to do better. But I'm not sure specifically what I can say that would give you some comfort. I don't know. Does that satisfy the first?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. The grant application process I could talk about all day. So most of the grants that we get are through the DOJ, be it BJA, OVW, so Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office of Violence Against Women, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. There are definitely others. And then some state grants that are just state grants, like the Shannon Grant or SSYI. So basically, some of these grants come out every year. Sometimes they come out every couple of years. Some of them are just a one-time thing. Some are things that we know we're going to apply for every year, like VAWA. And then sometimes there's something that we just kind of keep an eye on what comes out, and someone will either approach us and say, we don't want to apply for this, or we need this, find us a grant to apply for that will help us get it. Or we'll see an opportunity and think, this would be a great chance to support X, Y, and Z. And like I said, our office gets to be kind of innovative that way, which I love. And then oftentimes when the grants do come, if they're going to be heavily work intensive, they will also fund their own coordinator, which is why our office, which only consists of about 7 people right now, 3 of whom I believe are dedicated specifically to specific grants, and that's all they work on. So we really only have a few people in our office who write all these grants, manage all these grants. We also have a financial department, but it's, we work with the commissioner's office to make sure that the leadership is okay with what we're doing and that they're on board, but we really try to be, again, kind of innovative and cutting edge and seeing what other places are doing. The grants allow us to do site visits to other places to see what they're doing, to learn from other places. So it's really exciting work.
That's really helpful. And obviously, having been to some of the hearings where we, some of those longer hearings where we're going through multiple grants, it can be really helpful to sort of see the different places in which these grants interact. So appreciate seeing you again, and thank you so much for coming before us.
If you ever want, again, I would offer for you to come visit, but it's not worth the trip just for our office. But I know we have handy, Jason White is our grants manager, so he kind of oversees, he's generally responsible for all of our grants, and there's millions of dollars worth. If you ever wanted to see a list of all of our current grants, you could see the type, because it's anything from forensics microscopes to harbor patrol to 911 operations training to, pretty much you name it, grant funds can be used for so many different things. So if you are interested, I'm happy to get you more information about
Wonderful.
that.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. We'll now move to public testimony. When your name is called, please come down to one of the 2 podiums. State your name, neighborhood, and organization affiliation. Please speak into the microphone, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. We have one person who signed up for public testimony. It's Lashana Jones Butler. If you could come down to the microphone, please. Thank you. Either microphone.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, my name is Lashana Jones Butler, and I'm a part of the community. And I heard a lot of y'all responses. I'm with Flyby Movement. I haven't been distinguished yet, but it's a movement that says that, law is spending way too much time talking about it instead of, action. So it's a lot of time that's just passing. So you got the statute of limitations passing, and that's lacking people resources because now they're saying they can't help us because of statutes of limitations. So I think, some funds need to go towards like bettering the statutes of limitations because, people in my community, we don't get resources. Our resources has failed us. So the word I think Julia was looking for was like privilege versus none. non-privileged, because that's the thing now. I guess people feel like, oh, I'm in the privileged community and you in the non-privileged community, so you don't get the resources. And I know I've seen domestic violence so much to the point it's like the resources Felder's going to, from calling the police, when they come, they're like harassing everybody, and it's clear who needs the help and what had happened, and they're not trying to listen. They're so cocky. So I think the training, I believe a lot of them need to resign, because, you know, I get, you know, they say stuff like Donald Trump didn't want to let go. I feel like the whole white community kind of don't want to let go of leadership roles, and they really can't perform those well. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, they ought to step down and let other people try to solve some problems too, instead of always looking like a hero, you know? So I think, and I was listening to one of the other ladies, she had mentioned the violence and all that other stuff, and I have kids that's in jail, and right now that jail is chaotic. There's no check and balances. They're not getting rehabilitated. They're not getting access to their anger management programs. They're not getting access to like mental health treatment. They don't know if they need glasses because they can't see. They're blaming, they're doing a lot of name calling instead of diagnosing what's really going on in the community, what's making people so angry, where they're over here fighting family members that they know deep down inside they love, and that's the only one that's supporting them. But they usually say hurt people. So, and you usually hurt the one that's closest to you. So, like, you know, domestic violence is about money and fighting over money, and the resources just not coming in the community, as, you know, Julia said. And my thing is, though, you're talking a lot about the immigrants, and I feel like we ought to fix the Americans, because we're getting drowned out from resources to give it all to immigrants who came from a country who they should be trying to fix and, you know, protest wrongdoing and injustices too. So I just feel like, you know, when you go to talk to folks in domestic violence as a black woman, an English-speaking woman, it's like, oh, we don't understand. So you got to go through a lot of language barriers, and that's ignorant. You know, when people don't want to communicate well with you, and their language to learn English is free. I don't get free Spanish, so if that's the case, put the money where y'all also offer free Spanish, free Chinese, free other languages, so that we can all learn to communicate with each other. So, and then you have like the kids, and when you giving out funding, you gotta also look at the fact that the schools are lacking their part of the funding to combat domestic violence, because it's a community situation. It's going to take a community, a village, and all of that to get together. And the Boston Police Department, let me tell you, they need checked and balanced, because a lot of them been there so long that they're a little cocky and they're a little burnt out, so they don't really know. They just trying to keep their income. And I think we ought to wean out the people that just want to keep their income without trying to, you know, continue learning their jobs so that they can do them better. So once you stop learning, then you become burnt out and useless to everybody. So any kind of grant you would give them, you know, is just going to go to, it's not going to go to good use, because they're burnt out and they're stealing and they're lying, and it's terrible. So our community knows it, and we get frustrated, very, very frustrated. And I think that's where it all needs to stop. We just have to, you know, give funding to the jails so that they can get better rehabilitation resources, and also training for the officers, and more check and balances on people well-being that's in the position to respond to traumas and stuff like that. So that's it for me.
Thank you. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Do any of my colleagues have any other questions before we close out? Go ahead, Councilor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Sorry, and I just kind of thought of these as we were going, and thank you very much for the testimony, ma'am. How long, the funding, this 146, is this for the one position? How long does this last?
This is a 1 calendar year.
So this is just for the
Yep, so
calendar
it's
year?
effective as of January 19th, which is the date the contract got officially executed, through December 31st.
And is that how the other ones are funded as well?
The other advocates?
Yeah, the other set that
This
we
is
mentioned?
so this is the only one that's funded through this grant.
Okay.
So this grant has always funded one advocate, I believe. And recently we were able to get some overtime in there as well. Then I believe 4, let me make sure I'm getting this right, operating budget. We got 4 on the operating budget now, which means they are just permanently funded by the city.
Yep.
And then we've got 2 funded by a Mass Department of Public Health grant that was COVID related. And I don't know if that's on the fiscal year or the calendar year, and I don't know if it's a multi-year. I could certainly find out more information about that grant if you'd like.
Are there concerns if it's COVID related that it will soon run out?
There are always concerns.
yeah.
Right.
There are always
That's
concerns.
what I can imagine.
I mean, the last time, so when I did this testimony last year, at that time we only had 4 citywide
Yeah.
advocates, and then because of COVID, we've got these 2 additional, but things are just constantly fluctuating. Yeah.
Because it leads me to my next question, where it's like we're almost so close to covering the whole city, which I think would be a great goal to try and achieve for a very unfortunate matter. But when you're saying that the south end is the portion, it's also part of my district, and I think about the domestic violence that occurs among the homeless,
Yes.
especially what's going on down at Mass and Cass, et cetera. So to me, that's sort of one of those, that's a missing pocket of where a lot of this might actually occur and the help could go, and that it's not yet covered. And what could we do to try and help you all reach out in the domestic violence world to the folks that are out there that have no means to advocate for
For
themselves?
sure, yeah, we definitely need to get that district covered. I will say, because the Mass and Cass area, there's a lot of human trafficking coverage
Right.
over there. That has happened in the past. But, you know, for sure, we need an advocate over there.
Okay. Well, anything we can do,
Thank
please
you.
let me know in the future. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenna, for coming. Look forward to continuing to talk about grants. One thing I did learn when I went through our first budget hearing is so much, especially you talked about how much the police department, it can't run without the grants, right? And so many social services that go through so many different departments, if it's our BCYF, Boston Police and Fire, you know, even for uniforms, the basic needs that our department and city workers need come from grants. So thank you for the work you do, applying for these grants and, you know, securing them for our city. So I look forward to passing this on Wednesday at the council meeting and hopefully getting more funding so we can cover the whole city and really look at other needs we have across the city for this population. So with that, the hearing on docket 0138 is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.